Welcome to our weekly Friday Talk and Tour series when we share the opportunity to visit the studios of our wonderful artists and hear about their works and inspiration. These visits are brought to you by the Duncan McClellan Gallery and the DMG School Project of St. Petersburg, Florida. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Um, it's Happy Friday. So we're really glad that you came into our new episode. And we're really excited to have the artist here today. I had the pleasure of meeting her yesterday, Debra Steidel, and she brought in some beautiful work. And I've been a fan of her work ever since I've seen it over a number of years because we have done shows together. And I will tell you, it's to see the work in person, the depth of the crystalline glazes, which I don't know if any of you are familiar, and Deborah will go into detail on how they're done, but it's really a magical thing that happens. And she's a master at creating these surfaces. And then when you combine it with the glass, um, uh, it's absolutely beautiful. And so I think you'll love hearing about her today. The gallery has been, and the hot shop been pretty busy. We have Mark Laputa that is blowing glass in the hot shop for a couple of weeks. We started opening not just the emerging artist residencies that we've talked about, but I really felt it was important to have a place for mid-career artists because they work 15, 20 years perfecting their craft, and right now they don't have a hot shop to work in. So we are very pleased to be able to offer that. We're very pleased to have all of you here supporting us, and I really thank you for it. Please stop by the gallery when you can. We'd love to see you. And Mary, if you will do me the great honor of taking it away. You're muted.
Thank you, Duncan. Thanks everyone for being here, and thank you, Deborah, for coming all this way, bringing beautiful work. Um, as Duncan said, we've been following your work for a number of years, and so honored to have you here. Clay and glass are very closely related, and Deborah uses cast glass in some of her vessels as well. So it's a perfect marriage, and we're so happy to welcome Deborah to the gallery family. Um, to start with, we have a short video to share of Deborah speaking about her calling in the world of ceramics. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go into a little studio tour. We'll see her process and some beautiful imagery. So thanks for being here.
I have had a lifelong love affair with my work. I can't explain to anyone what drives my passion, what pushes me to work in my studio every day. I still look forward to having my hands in the clay again, feeling the sensation of raising each wall of a vessel. Each movement of the process becomes automatic and rhythmic. It is essential to our being to create. I feel at times I am part of a dying breed, as fine crafted works of art have become a rarity as people have left behind the tradition of working with their own hands. I have been told by so many people how much my work touches them, makes them smile every day, and gives them joy. It's amazing to feel that I have had this impact through my work.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah. That's a great lead in to the beautiful work that we're going to see just now. A few housekeeping questions before we start. If you
Mhm.
have a if you have a question, you can enter it into your chat button. There will be a few breaks where we'll invite you to unmute yourselves also and speak directly with Deborah. If you want to see Deborah and the full screen, go to your speaker view. Usually it's in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. So now we're going to share the screen and I'm going to share the screen. We'll start with a studio visit with Deborah. So hang on. So what we're seeing behind us right now is a close-up of Deborah's beautiful glazes, and she'll get into that very quickly. But here's her studio, and we're going to hear from Deborah. So Deborah, why don't you walk us through your studio?
Yeah, here it is. I've been in this studio about 2 years. That's my wheels. These are fairly new wheels. My original wheel I bought in 1975 finally gave out on me. And so I was able to decided to go with two. And it enables me to make larger forms. I can use the first wheel and then go to the second one for piecing it together. Lots of windows. There's my wear racks. That's a new piece ready to be fired. It's called Cha Cha. It's going to be in pinks and purples, I think, unless I change my mind. Back of the studio, and then a big work table, a few pieces in process, big slab roller we just got last spring. And out the door here, you saw me in the earlier video, I live across that little area there into that building upstairs. And then downstairs, I have a small studio gallery. And then to the right is where my kilns are. Here I am talking. I'm about to unload my kiln with some of the pieces that actually are in the Duncan's gallery. This firing process is very lengthy. This one was about 14 hours. I'm seeing on it, almost 15 hours. It takes several hours to get up to temperature. I got up to 2,345 degrees, which is cone 9. I let the kiln cool to about 2,000 for the first hold. Hold it for about an hour and a half or so. Then I lower the temperature to 1,800, this particular firing. Hold that for an hour and then back up again to about 1,900 degrees and then another hour, and then the kiln cools. And it takes about 24 hours for the full firing from start to finish so that I can open it up. And most of the time I wait until I can just open it and pick them up with my hands, unless I'm in a hurry. And here we are. So this was my first look. It's a little fuzzy. This was filmed on an iPhone, so it's the clarity of it's a little fuzzy, but it's always exciting to see. I have an idea of what it will look like, but there's so many things that can happen during the firing. What you see on the bottom is I call those catchers. So each pot has its own catcher, and that the glaze is very fluid at the high temperature. So it's running off the pot in that last few hundred degrees. And so you got to have that or it will ruin your kiln. And then you won't be able to get your pots out of the kiln either. So those are removed, which I will probably do in the next little segment here. That one is in the studio or in the gallery and it came out beautifully. It matched the glass really nicely. I'm trying to get them to be a continual color going from one to the next into the clay body or into the glaze. I believe this was the one I refired. Sometimes I can put one in the kiln if it didn't quite do what I wanted it to do, and the glaze will get a little deeper in texture in the glazes. This is a piece probably ready to go in the kiln. I love how they look before they're fired. They have this quality to them that's really neat. I have templates for each of the lids that I make. So I have about 6 different opening sizes. So when I'm planning this out, and the clay does shrink quite a bit, so I have to plan out the how big the opening will be for each lid I'm going to do, and know in advance which piece will hold which lid.
Folks, I'm going to go back to that video because there's some parts of that that I really, really want you to see. So bear with me.
Oh yeah, here's where I'm taking it off. Yeah. So these are, oops, here I am. So I have to run a torch on the bottom, and what that does is just kind of break the seal between the glaze and that catcher. And I've got to be really careful not to overheat the pot because it can crack it. And I have lost a few pieces that way. This one didn't look too terribly, sometimes the glaze is really, really thick on there. And so I heat that up. I usually hear a little ping and then tap with the hammer. I'm going to clean that off with a Dremel, with a diamond tip Dremel, and then I make little bases for each of those. So here we are with a sculpture that I did that will become glass. I work with a glass technician, Hugh McKay. He's out of Iowa, and I originally saw my pieces in glass, the lids. I love to sculpt and I love to throw, and I just wanted to see them translucent. And several years into making my lids, I found Hugh. He actually is a genius caster, and I knew I just didn't have the time to learn it myself yet, but I plan on doing that. This was my very first lid that I did in glass, and that's the particular one I kept in a box for about 5 years, and finally found him. There it is in glass. And the hours I would spend in these, I couldn't get the value of the piece because I spent so many hours in it. And then sometimes I would lose them in the firing, particularly this piece here. I would get cracks in the porcelain, and did do those in clay for quite a while, and then I glazed them in a metallic. But the translucency just, and the color just is so captivating. And there's that same piece in the pink and aqua. I generally stay under about 40 casts per color combinations. Some of them I'm only into maybe 10 of those. Each one will be a little different because I picked 2 different colors in the glass. So when they melt, they will mingle in the mold together, and each one will come out a little bit different. And there's that new blue glaze, which I love. That's got a lot of cobalt in that to give me that beautiful blue color.
So Deborah, we just saw, the casting process, and now we're going back to these images of the throne piece with these beautiful carving elements. We saw this, and here are some more.
These are all, these are done when the pot is what's called leather hard. So I am using tools, and I freeform them. I usually just draw the banding or draw where I'm going to do the leaves, and then I just go in and start carving away. And it's a little time consuming, but it's fun. And you'll see later on the glazes I use on those. So this is the cranes that are slip cast. So I made the original sculpture. I made a plaster mold, and I'm able to slip cast the body and then the neck separately. And then as I get them together, I can turn their necks different directions. So each pair of birds will be a little different on each lid. And then I will add the leaves later on to the base of it. That's it sitting, yeah, there it is now, where I've added the leaves to the where the legs of the birds come down.
And the beautiful relationship between the leaves on the top and the leaves on the vessel itself. You know, they just play off each other. Really, really lovely.
Well, thank you. Thank you. This was a commission. That's my old wheel. This is a commission I did a couple of years ago. And it's done in sections, and they wanted a really big piece. So what I do is I throw the base, throw a ring, and add it onto that piece, raise those walls up, throw another ring, and keep adding on until I get up to the height I need. It was cold.
Yeah. When you say throw a ring, so is it like adding coils and then throwing?
Well, it's kind of I'm throwing a pot, a hollow pot, a hollow with no bottom. So it's basically I'm throwing, pulling it out, and then I'm using calipers to make sure that the wall of the pot and the wall, the little groove that I'm going to flip upside down fits right on it, kind of like a lid almost. It's going to fit right on top, and then I smooth it on. And then once I take the bat off, which is what's holding the clay on, I pull that off, then I can get my hands inside. I think the next slide, yeah, there it is. So I'm going to cut that top part off that bat, which is that flat piece on top. So that's flipped upside down from the wheel and put on top. I'll smooth that where it's together so you won't see where it's attached. And then I'll work that piece into where I want the lid to sit.
So this looks like it's almost about 36 inches high, 31 inches.
I think that one was, yeah.
Wow.
I think by the time I was finished with the birds on top, yeah, it was, and then it had a base as well. This is actually a different one, but it was done the same way, a little bit more slender. What is slip casting? Someone asked me. Okay, so what slip casting is porcelain that's very liquid-like, and I'm making a mold that's out of plaster, and it's very porous. So most of the commercial dinnerware and what have you, teapots, you name it, that is made out there is done with slip casting. I needed something very lightweight on top of that lid. So I knew that I had to slip cast these. So it's a real thin coating of slip. So I'm pouring it into the mold. There we are again, those birds, and letting it sit for about a half an hour. The mold is very porous, so it's pulling the moisture out of the porcelain slip. Then after I usually have a timer on, I pour that out. I've got the shell of that body now inside of the mold. And then usually about an hour later, I open it up, and there I have the form. And then they're pieced together. So it's a different process than throwing.
So in this picture, the birds are slip cast, and then the leaves are added by hand.
Those are done by hand. So I'm just taking pieces of porcelain, and I have a sort of a texture. It's made out of plaster as well. I'll press that clay down into the plaster texture to pick up all those lines, and then I just kind of curl them around the shapes I want. And attach them to, and I start at the top and work my way down to the bottom. So that lid will fit it, it's got the measurement of the vessel that it's going to go onto.
Now, when you fire a piece like this, is it similar to glass in the sense that all the different thicknesses are compatible? So you don't have to worry about the different thicknesses when you fire the piece in the kiln?
Yeah, well, not so much, because like some of my cast pieces, the annealing is best thick to thin. You don't want to go thick, thin, thick. I can do, it's more, will it support thick, thin, thick, So I'm thin on the top, and the lid is thicker, so it can hold that weight of the piece. But it's not so much an issue. I have to just make sure it's dry. The thicker areas take longer to dry. If I fire too quickly, I can blow up a piece. And you have to make sure there's a pinhole in that body of that piece. You can't fire anything fully enclosed without having air escape, or it will blow up in the kiln. And as most potters know, they've had blowups in the kilns. And there it is before it's fired.
Beautiful.
They take about usually about 2 weeks or so to dry before I can do the initial firing. They'll go into the first firing, and then I go back and I start applying the glaze. The first firing is called a bisque, and here I am airbrushing a glaze on.
Right, right. So you don't dip or paint with a brush?
I do all of it. The pieces that are in the gallery, I did airbrushing. I'm finding that this particular glaze looks better when I airbrush. And certain glazes are okay to brush on. Some are okay to dip. I do little bowls that I pour it into and work the glaze around. So it's a variety.
And here are some of the glazes here.
And here they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are close up. So these crystals are probably maybe, well, these here are maybe a ½ inch at the most, maybe a ½ inch at the most in diameter. These are really tiny little crystals. I got real close to this one. I love this one. That is my new glaze I'm using, which I'm getting. Okay, there are special glazes that form the crystals. Yes, there are. It's a combination of potters use recipes for glazes, and there's millions of recipes, if not billions of recipes. Crystals are formed from zinc oxide, and a happy balance with that the other components in the glaze. There's feldspars and zincs and silica. There's all kinds of different minerals in the glazes. These are formulated to do that crystal formation, but it's also where you fire it to, and the temperatures where you're doing the holding of to get the crystals to grow. It's about a 3 to 4 hour process of getting these little guys. They start out small, and then they grow over the surface of the pot. And it's a lot of experimenting.
You spoke about those crystals growing as if they were blossoming. So it's almost like organic blossoming of
yes,
it
is. Yeah. There is a ceramicist in, I believe he's in, might be in England. He actually did mount a camera in his kiln, so he could watch his crystal. He grows them very large, so we're talking hours and hours in the kiln, and they're beautiful. And that's his thing. I don't want them to take over the piece, so I don't do real long holds like some people do. I want them to be a happy balance between the glaze and the lid, not one overtaking the other. This is a new glaze too. That is so blue. And so this has got a little bit of copper in it, and another one called manganese that gives you the purples. Yes, they're like frost on a window pane. Exactly. They start out small, and instead of cold, it's heat and time that grows these little guys.
Well, thankfully, we don't see much of that on our windows here in Florida. Much rather see it on one of your vases.
Yeah, exactly. The fun thing about this one is all those little tiny ones that are going around it. So the big ones obviously started earlier and had time to seed and grow, and then the other ones just formed later on in the firing. So I could take this same glaze and do different holds, and which I haven't done yet, and get a totally different look.
Now in this piece,
What are,
oh, sorry, go.
if someone wants to know what the gray areas are, there's a background color that it's kind of a purpley gray. So the glaze sort of, the molecules and everything sort of separate in this firing. So some of the ingredients will do this background color, and which sometimes can be crazy. I've seen some bright yellow with cobalt, which I don't like at all, but there's always going to be sort of this layer of crystals on top of this other layer of basically glass. This is done with copper and manganese. Can I control that? A little bit, but I don't know that I kind of like to control and let it do whatever it wants to do and be surprised. I find that trying to chase something too much can drive you crazy. So I try to let them do what they want to do with my own sort of input into not doing too there's like this glaze here, this green one. If I fire that differently, I get this real garish green with these over the top crystals. I like this soft muted color. And of course I can't control where each of those are going to form. That's just happy, you know, when it does that. So this is actually the same glaze as that blue one I was just talking about, but with the pink underneath, that's how it reacted. So it's the pink is actually a stain that I put on the vessel, and then I apply the glaze over it, and so that pink comes through into the glaze, and it reacts just different than it does with the cobalt.
And what would this stain be made out of?
The stains are formulated by company. They're oxides basically that are blended to give you a little more controllable colors, and they're kind of like a palette, like an oil painter would use. So there's a variety of different colors you can choose from. My goal is to find the right colors that will come through with what I have in my brain and not change on me so much. And this particular glaze, because it's low in titanium dioxide, which is another crystal former, is keeping the colors a little more true to what they are, which is really fun. This is it's just a really beautiful glaze, a different one than the one we saw before, rather pearlescent. Well, so this is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. This is a great next step.
This one is that same blue glaze. Now I've carved all of that on the rim there, and now I'm dry brushing. The glaze itself is matte, kind of a matte metallic. And what you see I'm doing is I'm putting kind of a patina on. It's a specific sort of paint with a lot of metals in it that I seal it afterwards, but I'm dry brushing it. So I'm just putting a little bit of this patina on the brush and just trying to hit the tips of that texture.
And do you have to fire it again after that?
No, this is for post firing. And so I do seal it so that it won't ever tarnish.
Would anyone like to unmute themselves and ask a question of Debra?
I would. When you're doing it, your different forms. As you know, I'm thrilled with crystalline glazes that you are doing and what happens, because I love that magic. Yes, you can guide it, but it's that surprise. Now, do the crystalline glazes change on different forms that you do it on? For an example, do they grow more on the belly of a piece, for an example?
A lot of the ones that you see in the gallery, you'll see that there's this beautiful cluster of them underneath the piece. And this one's a little more reliable, and it kind of, on these, it looks like it broke a little more on the shoulder and then more down. Now the one that's on the one with the two cranes, when I put that on an oval, I will really get a bunch of color down at a lot of crystals down at the bottom. But this particular firing, it did a really nice thing. So if I can do that again, cross my fingers. Sometimes inside the vessel is interesting too. I don't always put a crystalline in there. Most of the time I do, but sometimes I'll look down and go, wow. And I think it's because the heat is retained in there longer, and I can get these kind of cool crystals growing inside.
Do you keep a journal of the effects and the temperature of that?
I do. And so I have different, well, for instance, the tall pot with the cranes is a different firing than the other pots, and a different glaze. Mm-hmm. So it's going to fire in its own different temperature and different holes.
Well, our friend Joni just asked a question. For an example, what is the inspiration behind the cranes?
I saw this documentary, and about, it was a nature documentary, and I saw these cranes. I think it was in Asia somewhere. I can't remember what country. And they were doing this dance where they actually shadowed each other perfectly in this dance. And that's how they found their mate. And so if they didn't shadow, they were flying in unison, they were doing the back and forth movements, and it was wild to watch these, especially flying. They would do these dips together. So I decided to call this piece Shadow Dancers. So it was very inspiring. And I think these birds are, for me, the most beautiful, graceful to sculpt. They could be an egret or a crane. It's just that silhouette of that long neck and the long beaks.
They're beautiful.
So, thanks.
Really honored to have them in the gallery.
Oh, thank you, Duncan. Appreciate that. I am very honored to be there.
Can you talk a little bit about this form?
So I started doing that particular lid about 15 years ago, and I did it, like I said before, I was doing them all in porcelain and then putting that bronze glaze on them. And they were really attractive, but I just spent so many hours working on them, and I would get cracks, and because they were so thin, they would break easily. The glass is a lot stronger for some. Well, I guess porcelain when it gets really, really thin can be fragile, but the glass seems a bit stronger to hold that. But the translucency is what I wanted, and I got it.
So here's some close-ups of the work that's in the gallery. And if you want to talk about each piece, I'm sure each piece had a challenge for you.
Yeah, this one is a new glaze, so I wasn't sure what it was going to do. So, sometimes I experiment on my pieces that I've spent hours on, and luckily it came out. So it's got this beautiful turquoise with just you can't really tell in this photo, but they're real small little crystals. And then I put another glaze at the bottom that I knew would crystal a little bit larger. So, and I love the flow of the blue. Yes. It looks like water. Yeah. And yeah, who would have thought I would have loved pink? That's got a little aqua in the lid. So it's, I like those two colors together. It's a really nice combination. And I've been looking for a pink for a while, and finally, pinks are hard because at higher temperatures, they do tend to burn out, and you end up with just white, So I had to make the formula really strong pink, a strong percentage of the stain was pink. That's the same glaze as the other one. And as you can see, they were in the same firing together and did slightly different things. And that lid, again, is the pink and aqua, a little bit of aqua. And it's hard to see in this photo, but there's a little bit of that in there as well. That, the aqua on top was just so perfect for that lid. There's a little bit of blue in that lid as well. And I love this glaze.
And look at the crystal on the shoulder of that piece. Gorgeous.
Deborah, there was a question,
Yes.
Andy, in regards to your kilns. Now, do you exclusively use electric, or have you used gas fired as well?
I did gas firing years ago in a studio I was in, but I've been pretty much an electric kiln all my life. My very first kiln was 1 cubic foot.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Couldn't get much in there.
So Deborah, speaking of your first kiln,
Uh-huh.
how did you first become involved with clay?
Oh gosh, I think I was talking to you about this the other day. I remember I lived in Northern Virginia back where when I was younger, it was very wooded where we lived, and we had a creek, and I used to go down to the creek and bring up what I thought was dirt, but I remember my dad saying, "No, that's clay," and so I used to just play with this clay all the time. It's something in me. I don't know what it is. And I just, when I was in high school, I wanted to learn the wheels really bad. And so I was able to talk my art teacher into letting me try this old rickety wheel we had. And then on my 18th birthday, I bought for $150, I bought this little tabletop wheel, and I bought a book on how to throw pottery. and and this thing did not work very well. The pulley kept falling off the motor right in the middle of a pot, and I'd have to turn it upside down. About a year later, I bought my my professional wheel. I was 19, I guess, and I worked on that wheel for 40 years.
Wow.
And it finally gave out. But I don't know where it comes from, but I just had this fascination with I always did art. I was painting and doing, other things too, pen and ink. But as soon as I found clay, all I wanted to do was throw.
Wow.
Yep. So I am self-taught. I started at 18. I got married pretty young, and with kids, I was able to work at home, and then started doing shows, and eventually worked my way up into the better shows, and then started getting some galleries, and it's been 46 years. Wow. Kiln type, yes, the kiln type is electric. I have 4 kilns. A couple of them are just old that I need to get rid of, and then one's really big. I almost fell in it the other day. It's 36 inches deep, so I'm Charlie, my partner, has to hold on to me or I'll fall out. But I can get several stacks of wear in that one, and it fires really nicely.
So that was a question. How do you get one of those big pieces into the kiln? Do you have to climb up a ladder and then put it?
I have a little foot ladder, and I think that one, I'm trying to remember. I have one that's a little bit shorter, and so because the pot is not so, once it's got the lid on it, it's really tall. But I'm able to get those in the kiln. I do have strong arms, or at least I used to. I see some of these massive pieces that people, particularly men, throw, and that's never going to happen with me. But I think that one we were looking at was probably weighed about 20 pounds by the time it was done. So, yeah. This was a difficult lid to make, and it's hollow inside. So I started with this coil of clay and rolled it up, and then carved all that texture out. And there's some little holes in it. And then I mounted it on the lid, and it was tricky, but it came out really nice.
And once you make a mold like that, can you use it again?
Yes. So these are it's very similar to bronze in that you're making your original. Then Hugh, the guy that helps me with the casting, he will do a silicone mold on the piece so it can go into the undercut. So basically he does the mold over the original, pulls the original out, and then he's going to pour wax into the mold now. And then once he has the wax, he makes the investment mold over that wax, melts the wax out, and then the glass melts back in. So instead of like bronze is done the same way, but it's being poured in, and then with the glass, of course, it's melting and then then it's annealed for hours. And then the mold is knocked off.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of steps.
I think Duncan mentioned that you might be coming and doing a casting class at the gallery.
I would love to. Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Here's
it's finding, I think now in my life, I'm ready to start taking a little more time to do those things and having more control over it, because he does a fabulous job, and I love what he does, but I want a little more control over
Sure.
that process.
And here's a beautiful piece you brought in yesterday, and
yeah,
we are pretty sure that someone is acquiring it. So congrats.
That's awesome. Yay.
And here is the work in the gallery. So any of you that are online and have not yet been to the gallery, please do come in and see the beautiful pieces.
There you
Debra,
go.
thank
Thank you all
so much.
Oh, thank you all. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Does anyone have questions or comments for Debra? I know that there have been a lot of wonderful comments, and Debra, you said you weren't into chemistry, but really it seems like you understand it pretty well.
Yeah, you learn as you go along. It's more experimenting and seeing what the results are going to be, and then tweaking it. It's a long process, and it's like anything else. If you do it long enough, you're gonna learn it.
And do you ever see yourself incorporating more glass into your ceramic work?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think too much about what I'm going to do next. I just those new pieces, the cha-cha that ones with the ruffles, I keep thinking, do I want to put some glass in that? Somewhere in that piece? Yeah, I'll have to send you some photos of that series.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah. It is it's fun to have been able to do this all my life. I feel very honored to be able to, and lucky that I've been able to do this.
Well, it's artists like you that make us so happy to be working in this field. And, it's really a mission of the gallery to connect people like you and your work with the public and help them appreciate it, help them understand it, and hopefully acquire it if there are pieces that work for them. So it's
Hey,
a
Jennifer.
real pleasure. Oh, Jennifer, is Jennifer?
I told her we were neighbors.
Oh,
neighbors
really?
In the gallery. We're neighbors in the gallery.
Oh, in the gallery. That's right.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. So Duncan, I know that you want to talk a little bit about the residency that's happening right now. And Debra, are you going to stick around in Florida for a week or so, or what's your schedule?
We actually are going to have to head back this weekend. So we've got some stuff to get done. So yeah. Oh, and I'm already missing the wheels. So it's pitiful.
All the more reason that we're very, very lucky to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now that you sold that one piece, you can afford half of a Super Bowl ticket.
That's okay. I'll watch it on TV. Funny.
Duncan, you're muted. Duncan's muted and he's trying to tell us something. There you go.
Well, yeah, it was great meeting you and having you in, Deborah. Mary wanted me to talk a little bit about Mark Laputa that's here for the 2-week residency in the hot shop. So he'll be blowing from approximately 10 to 4 almost every day that we have glass. So come in, meet him, see the show. After Mark is here till February 13th, and then we have Aya Oki coming in. And I think some of you might remember Aya. She was one of our emerging artists that won a residency. And it was a real pleasure to have her. And her career has taken off. So we couldn't give her an emerging artist residency, but like I said before, there's these very accomplished artists that need a place to work right now. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to our supporters that allow us to have a place and to sustain these artists coming in, because our hot shop runs about anywhere from 800 to 1,000 a day to keep that going. And it's because that you support us that we're able to do that. So thank you very much. I will tell you, they are very, very grateful. And I am too. So I hope all of you have a wonderful weekend. Be safe. Watch the Super Bowl in your own home. No big parties. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode. So thank you very much. I'll learn to talk before the next one. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Deborah, so much. Thanks everyone for attending and have a great weekend. See you soon.